Welcome back to segment numeral, well, it's just the third one, where we learn to be a better gamer. So, I'm back in this situation where we're seeing Grubby swiftly tech up to Twilight Council tech, and just as a general tip, oh yeah, another thing that I just am loving out of Kas, he target fires the sentries. Grubby also advances forward with a couple zealots to try to pick off SCVs, which works probably more effectively. Actually, how many did he kill off? I was looking over the expansions, talking about all that crud. Wow, he killed off a lot. Let me actually just go to the 10-minute mark. Oh, I'm so good. Alright, 15 workers have been killed off. This is just amazing. This is so good. If you have 5 or more stalkers, you can one-shot SCVs. So first coming in here to try to kill this off. We looked at that. Coordinating it with this attack at the front. And it's just an SCV killing mission. I think he kills off 10 total here. Yeah, just amazing. Absolutely amazing, 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 amazing. Yeah, so let's say you're behind on bases. You're not feeling so good. A gas-based defense is always going to be a strong candidate for the correct choice. Always. Why? Because it's really easy to suddenly max out your gas production on your additional bases. Really damn easy. So the choice to go for Templar and Storm is a really damn easy choice. Not a sheep coal. Nice. Obviously, you don't want to get too much gas because you'll go belly up. You'll have no minerals. But, yeah, love it. 2 gas geysers, pretty gosh darned fast. Getting Storm up pretty gosh darned fast. Nothing but chrono boosting. Remember that 13-minute mark I talked about? Yeah. Yeah, you do. Grubby's trying to beat it. 3 minutes for stim. 3 minutes for stim. 3 minutes for stim. 3 minutes for stim. That's a lot of Marines that Kas has. That's 38 Marines. He's like 38 of them, yes. Revelation. He sees it all. No gas here. No pylon here. A little bit of a crisis. And then suddenly the most tragic moment of the whole game, if you're a Kas fan, is this moment when Kas didn't check for this expansion. He just didn't. So easy to not do that. But this Templar that was like 6 seconds from Storm got killed. And Grubby, who had barely been alive at this point in time, suddenly just pulled an amazing stay alive. And we've been seeing a sort of similar trend from Liquid Hero as a player as well. He likes to do aggressive things and then very quickly pull into Storm and get his Forge upgrades much, much later. This is a very painful moment for Kas when he realizes, oh god, I could have killed the gold base instead of this other base. So now we got a real match! So per usual, I think Kas is going to do some of his standard stuffs. He's going to be just going for the gold. Although I think that this Ghost Academy is a little bit of a... it's a little bit of a funky choice, but I think it's an understandable choice. Alright, well we just lost our whole army. We're both going to be kind of small on armies, so I can't really do the multi-pronged drop harassment as well anymore. On this map, I can honestly just drill this. I can just put units here, I can snipe with ghosts and drop there and kill it. I don't need to do the multi-pronged attack, so you know what, let's just ramp up the ghost dodge. Get back to normal zoom, damn it. Come on, mouse, work with me, damn it. My mouse is just super bad. Come on, mouse. Come on, mouse. There we go. I'm trying to make little circles like this, and instead it's like drifting all around, drawing little uppercase letters. Super smart from Grubby. He's delayed everything to try to get up these additional... he's delayed forges, delayed other upgrades in order to get up the extra gateways. So he can defend these kind of multi-pronged attacks that Kas is doing just amazingly well. Somehow with the sickest spreading of all time. Again, it's not really multi-pronged aggression that managed to pull this off. It's just like a drop attack trying to spread out against Storm. Kas accidentally loses all the things. But I think that even this one ghost can be pretty significant in these early game stages. So again, Grubby's just gonna want to put dudes right back into gas as soon as he can. Transferring some more probers. And I just love the responsibility we see out of Grubby. Look at all the Templar everywhere. Templar spread out so fantastically. Some Templar never even belonging to a control group. One armor en route. I think that in these spots where there's been attempts to gather up additional defenses to stay alive, and now maybe it's attacking time, I think adding on gateways is a good choice. I think adding on cannons is a good choice. I think that going for a robo right now is a little bit too inflexible of a choice. A little bit too inflexible. But either way, Grubby is moving forward here. But he has 8 Templar. 4 are here. Just defending all the notable bases. One notable base, a second, and I feel like there was another Templar somewhere around here. So I can understand what Grubby's trying to go for here. It's very specific to this map. Grubby's going, alright, well, you're trying to get a gold base. I really don't want you to do that. I'm going to keep attacking you to try to prevent you from getting that gold up. Because if a Terran gets a gold base, it's really a pain in the ass to defend this. As any race. Even in Terran vs. Terran, it's a pain in the ass to defend this if your opponent also has his gold. Alright, cool. So, per usual, in the midst of tension, Grubby gets this Nexus up. He's getting his second Forge up to really just catch up on upgrades. He's beginning to get his Robo, which I really think, again, would be weird to get this Robo for a big Colossus transition. It's a little clunky, but getting it for Warp Prism, getting it for Observers, and also here, too, still intending on getting more gateways, I like a lot. But what's kind of unusual about what Grubby's been doing here is these gateways have been staying extremely active. Like, very, 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 very active throughout. And normally we just don't see that. So we talked a little bit about this vulnerable juncture. The most common thing that we see from Protosses is to have already gotten 13 to 15 gateways, especially with this gold up, and to just have an overpowering amount of Zealot Archon. We're talking something like 180 food when Terran's at 120, just a ton. Grubby goes for a little bit bigger of a play, and this is where we do see that little bit of a juncture stress come into play. This is just all in on Storms. Super all in. If I storm well, I win. If I storm poorly, I lose. Trying to keep this base alive to this kind of aggression is a real pain in the ass. Oh god, it's stressful just thinking about it. Brr. Somehow Grubby's gotten up an expansion, somehow. And also in the meantime, we saw some of this on Heavy Rain, but... Oh look, it's a little Kakaru. Or excuse me, a Karak. Kakaru's the wrong game. Grubby being very responsible about getting a sentry for a Guardian Shield later. Continuing to prepare for the counterattack. And we talked about this from Kas's point of view in the last game. In this game, Grubby's just trying to lock Kas out of a 4th. So he just builds a pylon where the 4th goes. I think I recall describing this as being a pain in the ass to keep alive, and we're seeing it. In general, this is like nearly impossible to hold off. Kas gifted Grubby with just enough time to get these Colossus out. But generally, Warp Prism counterattacks with the additional gateways are how Protoss players are transitioning from fast Templar tech. a very gentle switch to Colossus at first is much more common, and we can see exactly why from these kinds of battles. Again, Grubby amazingly bought himself just enough time to get huge, and the ability to be huge at this point in time is beneficial. Yeah, and you can throw out of that's what she said. I'm sort of fine with that. And so responsibly he warps in Templar. So responsibly. Are those two still in the main? Nope. Uh-oh. Is one still at the expansion? Nope. Uh-oh. But very responsibly keeping many Templar warping in at the backside. So just as it's a pain in the ass to keep your gold live against Terran's gold, it's a pain in the ass to keep Terran gold live against Colossus. But the bigger target right now for Grubby is this fourth base that has been gotted. I gotta speed this up, unfortunately, because we're running out of show. Ah, game 2 was so lovely. Zealots moving in, identifying, uh-oh, Spaghetti-O, I can't kill this. That's when it's time to throw down a Dark Shrine, as a Dark Shrine's super important to holding that off. And amazingly, this 3 Robo facility, I don't really think getting Colossus much more beyond like 5 or 6 is incredibly important in the mid-game. And we have this really uncomfortable position again. As I've said in the last game, this maxed Ghost army, maxed Ghost Viking Marine Marauder army, very hard for a Protoss to beat if the engagement actually begins. Protoss tends to just retreat and throw a storm, retreat and throw a storm, retreat and throw a storm, and chip and chip and chip away and chip away. Triple A, chip away. So I think Grubby does the most natural thing. He's going to apply pressure as best he can to this expansion, while rounding out his tech, getting Blink, getting the upgrades, getting the additional gateways, because he hasn't had those in a long time. Still sneaking another expansion in the midst of all this crisis. But on Heavy Rain, what Grubby was really leveraging was the fact that this Terran army has to stay together. So when this Terran army would do something like go here, Grubby would do, or I can't do it on this map, but you know, if Kas would attack over here, Grubby would counterattack over here, because, I mean, it's hard for the Protoss to directly engage the Terran army. But now that it's Habitation Station, I'm sure many of you have seen this, where swarm hosts plant themselves here, and then nothing gets in through the bottom, nothing gets in through the top, because the swarm host can just lock down the whole map. The same is true for this Terran force up here. This is going to be able to lock down the whole map. So in just a spectacularly brilliant choice, Grubby is going to transition to Tempests, which is one of the hardest times to go for. It's one of the most uncomfortable things to go for as well. Actually, I gotta back up. But it's the only choice that Grubby really has, because he must address this army in a head-on fashion, and he just does not want to. So here's the perfect example of this. Grubby identifies that the Terran army is up here. Grubby also has complete vision coverage in mid, extending up and all the way down and around every which way. He even has some vision down there. So he mostly knows where the army is. So Grubby sees this. Doesn't want to engage directly. If he can, he's going to go for an expansion. He has recall, as long as that mothership core doesn't get EMP'd. But even then, Protoss can replenish much more quickly thanks to Chrono Boost. These Templar can force some run-ins with, force some storm run-ins. Very thin move for Grubby to be able to pull that off. Where do you recall to? Oh, okay, the gold. These Zealots continuing to move in. Grubby's obviously trying to buy himself time, but this is a direct response to the statement, gosh, how the hell do I engage a Protoss army? How the hell do I engage a Terran army directly? Because Kas has built up the Army O'Doom. Grubby would like to maybe be a little more aggressive. But hey, this army's in the middle, so where can you possibly go as Protoss? Only these small zealot runaways. We like to talk about building a pylon and doing warp-ins, but there's nothing wrong with just warping in the zealots here and then sending those across. Takes a little longer, but as we can see, it's going to be just as effective. Boom, it's Tempest time. Per usual, being as annoying as possiblement. Grubby upgrading everything as much as possiblement. Expanding as much as possiblement. It's a lot more counterattacking. Generally the focus for Protoss, but you can't here. So I just think it was so cool to see Tempest. Grubby's still trying to get him to walk into storms, picking off a thing here, picking off a thing there. The worst storm in the universe went down just recently. Very thrilled to see him make an appearance. And suddenly the slowest engagements of all time. I do think that Kas is probably in pretty good condition to win this fight. But for some reason, EMPs galore, storms go down, and the Vikings just never shot down the Colossus. I'm actually going to pull this back just a pinch, just a hair. I think that this battle is a great example of requirements for scan engagement angles. This is the hero Templar that wins the game. Let me actually get the Templar count. Where's the Templar? There's only 3 high Templar. 1, 2, 3. This is it. This is the only Templar. Big battle right now. We always want to get him to retreat into storms. So there's one set of storms that I think were really instrumental, but the bigger thing here is these Colossus. The amount of shots the Colossus get off. I mean, they were shooting for the whole battle. Said these Vikings wound up going for the Tempests. I mean, if you look at the army, it was just some Zealots left over and 2 empty energy Templar. So, again, I really think that Kas could have broken through this. But I think that he was so distracted by the storms that the Vikings just went a little haywire. Which is kind of one of those like, oh god, the pain kind of moments. Kas set himself up the expansions. But now with the Tempest and the Colossus count still very high, the Colossus count still at 3 or so, Grubby's going to be much more willing to take those very direct engagements. Even willing to eat a few shots there. Tempests are probably like my favorite unit to have. They just can't die. They have so much health, man. They take so long to get up. Once you get them up, oh my god, they never die. So for the first time in the entire game, Grubby is eager to leap forward and engage the enemy directly. For like the first time this game. Oh, so good. And one of the hardest fought games, the hardest fought series I've ever seen. Grubby pulls it off. What a legend. We're going to take questions, and let me remind you that tomorrow I'm playing Banished all day. The little Sin game. I'm also Fun Day Monday next week is give me your best games where you open 6 pool. I'm an asshole, so I look forward to Seeing your submissions. Hunsoda says, Day 9, when does Terran want Marauder as opposed to Marine? Is it a tool for being ahead, being behind? Response? The answer to that is shifted over time. I'm actually just going to come back. I'm going to just do some random pollings. No, not right as the bad battle happened. Let's see here. Generally, we see something like these numbers, the Marauder Marine mix, tends to be fairly even in the mid game, and then the Ghosts replace the Marauder. So the way that most Terran players will do it is they'll just get about 2 reactors, all the rest tech lab, and then any barracks beyond that goes in about a 2-to-1 ratio. So as in, it looks like, does he only have 8 barracks? Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, generally it's like 3 reactors, 5 tech labs, or 2 reactors, 6 tech labs. And barracks tend to get added on in 3s. And every time you add on 3 more barracks, you go like tech lab, reactor, tech lab. And then you just let those buildings dictate the compositions. All the reactor barracks build Marines. All my tech lab things build Ghosts and Marauders. So in the mid game, it's a lot more like half and half of Marine Marauder. And then in the late game, it's a lot more like a 4th Marauder, a 4th Ghost, half Marines. But for a while, it was almost exclusively Marines in the late game. The most fragile mix, the biggest damage outputting units, but I think that it's just too fragile. So doing that sort of structure, I think, is great. Make the building, let the buildings dictate your composition. So Metallobus says, you mentioned that Grubby couldn't engage the army directly, so he built Tempest. It seemed that the turning point involved Great Storms and mismicroed Vikings. What would his strategy have been? That had been the case. If that engagement didn't happen, and let's do it in 2 cases. First of all, let's say the engagement did happen and there wasn't mismicro. It would have probably been a very much closer fight where Grubby would have been able to hold on because he has all the warp gates and would have warped in and would have been okay, and then the game would have gone on. What if the engagement never happened? It would have basically been exactly what we saw down here in the bottom right. Let me get to it in the game real fast. It would have looked a lot like this, but just with bigger armies. It would have been the Protoss player with Colossus and Templar. In short, it's Colossus and Templar defending the Tempests. Sort of Templar at the front. Again, the Tempests move forward. Actually, can we get that? F10, options, gameplay, control groups. Okay, I guess it's not showing the control groups in this version. But yeah, the Tempest would sort of lead and chip, and then the whole army underneath is just a tool to keep them alive. So that's really what would have happened. So again, we don't even have to worry about the fact that that battle was mismanaged. Grubby would have gotten 4, 5, 6 Tempests or so, not too much more than that, and just begun to find where the army is and shoot and defend, and then shoot and then defend them, and shoot and then defend them. Let's see. Uh-oh, someone got banned and then someone got misbanned. That's so awesome. Natel 1884 got misbanned. That's fantastic. I love that. Let's take 2 questions from Wizard. He says, allow me to be greedy. You got it, man. In the first game, the Terran went for a very Marauder-heavy army. Could more mortals have been an option for Grubby? 2. In the first game, there were clear options for Kas to base trade. Could that have been an option for Kas? So I'll do the second one first. Would a base trade option have been good? Probably not. I mean, when you have a lead, your goal is to maintain and extend that lead, not to try to leverage it in hopes to win right now, because once a base trade happens, it's very hard to avoid being the player that runs into the storms. Like, really hard. We both have no economy. It's really hard. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a concise way to say it. Even though Terran are more mobile, if the Protoss has a good composition, it's still very easy to lose in that direct engagement until you have the Mega Death Force. I mean, we saw Kas have the Mega Death Force, and in the base trade scenario, Grubby was just able to kill stuff and, like, the recall back, and a lot of times when you think you're in a base trade, the recall happens and it just doesn't work. It's unreliable in the matchup for a lot of reasons, and I would encourage you to just sit quietly and think about what would play out and all that stuff from the game replay state. That's a terrible answer. I'm sorry, but I don't think so. A simpler answer is you have an economic lead. Why do you want to try to sacrifice your economic lead in a base trade? Because the longer you have an economic lead, the bigger of an edge you get. If you're mining 500 more minerals per minute than your enemy, let the game go on for 10 minutes and then have a 5,000 mineral advantage. That's a much better answer. So the answer to the first question was the more Marauder-heavy composition. Oh yeah, what about Immortals as a choice? So we first begin by saying what position was Grubby in. He was in a position where he had just gone for Blink and didn't work. So we added on a lot of gateways to get charge lots. You got a Robo as well. We could say, well, what about putting in more Immortals? Well, it comes down to how much damage that unit is probably going to do. In huge, gigantic armies versus huge, gigantic armies, Immortals don't get to do very much damage. They just don't get to do that many shots. So let's take one Immortal. He's probably going to get off. He's probably going to be at the front line of things. The Zealots are going to be getting eaten up. And then once the battle is done, yeah, those frontline Zealots is going to burn it pretty quickly. I'd imagine an Immortal is going to get off 7 shots, 6, 7 shots. And in the midst of that battle, it's kind of hard to make sure that it's shooting at the Marauders. But then if you have so 6, 7 shots, if they do manage to get off on the Marauder, that's like 350 damage total dealt by that Immortal. But if you just have like a swipe of the Colossus, it's a lot of damage. That's 34 damage. And if it's hitting, I mean, if it shoots twice and it hits 5 targets each time, you've already done more damage. Just with a quick zoom, zoom. Okay, you've already done like more damage than an Immortal ever could have. And you didn't even have to assume that it was a Marauder. So that's how I would do that. That's how I would do that math. So, but once you get to smaller forces, like we saw when Grubby was really kind of in a bad spot and began to build Immortals, I think that they're very, very, very excellent against those. Okay, look, I'm done. I'm like real tired. I'm going to go eat some food. You have yourself a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to be streaming all day. It's going to be Banished. Fantastissimo.